I'm not sure if I saw a thumbs up or not. Okay, thanks, Samantha. All right, guys. So in chapter 14, we're in chapter 14, and chapter 14 is going to continue to talk about starting your career. This time, we're going to focus in on the people that you will engage with, right? So we've all heard the term professional, right? We've heard people say you are a professional, behave in a professional manner, right? Act like a professional. You know, we may have asked ourselves, like, what does that mean, right? What does it mean to be a professional, to act like a professional, to have some professionalism? Well, professionalism by definition is a soft skill, right? It's not a technical skill, it's a soft skill. And what does it include? Essentially, it includes how you think, how you act, and the decisions that you make. You can sum it up into your workplace skills, which we've learned about, and your self management skills, which we'll talk about here today. So when we talk about workplace skills, we know what those are, right? We've seen those, the different type of skill sets that you'll need: time management, being a team player, maintaining deadlines, things of that nature. But when it comes to self-management skills, what is that, right? That has to do with you personally, right? That has to do with you and how you control yourself. I think we all have been in environments where we wish someone else had better self control. Maybe it's how they responded to something, whether it's criticism or disappointment or loss, or maybe they have to work late, or maybe, you know, um, they're not happy with a coworker or a team member. How do you manage that? Like, do you have good self management? One of the key things, besides obviously, being on time and being dependable, is this thing at the bottom called emotional regulation. Has anyone ever heard of the term emotional intelligence? You might have heard of that. It's become a catchphrase in some circles. I've seen people say it more like, oh, the person's emotional intelligence is low. What people are referring to is emotional regulation. In other words, can you control yourself? Are you self aware? Are you the type of person that knows that when you are under pressure, you tend to get angry? Or when you are under pressure, it tends to give you a lot of anxiety. Or when you are under pressure, you tend to freeze up. Do you know yourself? Why is that important? Because when you work for someone else, when you work in an environment where you have to be a team leader, where you have to be on a project, when you have to engage with consumers, especially at the professional level, do you know yourself well enough to say, you know what? I'm tripping. It's me. I know that when I go into this type of environment, that it is going to trigger a certain response from me. Let me regulate myself. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Give me a thumbs up if you understand what that is. Maybe, maybe you've had that type of conversation before. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, right. Now, and it takes, sometimes some people have it, right? It's one of those skills that some people are just innate, they're born with it, right? Some others of us, we have to learn it, and it doesn't really matter whether you have it naturally or you have to learn it. The importance is that you need it. If you are going to be successful, I mean, you don't need a psychology degree, but you almost need a psychology degree, because you have to deal with people, and whether it's a consumer or a coworker, whether they're going to be your employees or your boss, you will be dealing with people for the rest of your life. And when you're talking about dealing with lots of money and lots of people, you need to understand emotions, starting with your own, and then being reflective enough to understand others. Now, I am going to tell you, I know myself so well I had to learn myself that I won't even put myself in certain situations. For example, I know that I work best as an educator. Why? Because I'm very creative. I like to be able to perform in such a way that it allows me to be expressive. And I can't do that when I'm working alongside others. I mean, I do it, I'm known for being flexible and, getting along with people, but my preference is to work alone. I tend to move uh, towards things like working in finance, working as a researcher, working as an educator, working as a consultant, and I prefer to work alone. Why is that? Because I know I get frustrated easily when things are too abstract. I'm very linear, which means I like things in an order, one step, two step. I do everything by the numbers. Imagine how self-reflective you have to be to know that about yourself. Do you know yourself? Why is it? This is going to be very important when you go to try to build your career. You must know yourself so you'll know what type of company to work for, what type of situation to put yourself in, how you respond to things. I get a lot of anxiety when I'm in certain situations. When I'm working with people, and you guys know how, let's say you're on a team of four and you have to get something done and everybody wants to give their input. But then once we go around and everybody gives their input, I'm the type of person that I want to keep us on track. I want to know what next steps are. I want to know how we're going to begin. I want to write things down and I want us to follow the sequence. There are other people that say, man, let's just get started and we'll figure it out as we go along. Is there a right or wrong way? No, right? Are you going to have bumps in the road no matter what? Yes. But my preference, the way I work, I have to work that way. I do not work well in the abstract. I don't. I will freeze up. It gives me a lot of anxiety. So because I know that about myself, I'm very specific in the type of work that I do and the type of places that I go. Because why kill yourself, right? Why even put yourself through that, right? And when I am forced to be in those situations, I know how to control myself. I know when it's me, right? I know how to check myself. That is going to be very important. Something else that I want to talk a little bit about is the notion of um, multicultural, multi-generational workplaces. Let me tell you guys something. As long as you live, one thing that will never change is how people think based on, now watch this, not where they're from, because that's what we always think. We always think something has to do with ethnicity or, you know, um, where a person grows up. You know, did you grow up in Europe? I grew up in Africa. This other person grew up in Spain or not Spain or, the islands, right? Culturalism or multi-generationalism segregates people more than anything else. What are you talking about, Miss Taylor? What is something that every last one of us will be talking to our grandkids about when we say, man, there was a time when the entire world was on lockdown? What will we be talking about? Somebody tell me. Y'all kids just don't know. Everybody was scared. People were dying. We were afraid. What what issue? What will we be telling our grandkids? What am I talking about? Y'all don't know? COVID. COVID is something we all have lived through. Have we lived through World War II together? Did we live through getting our independence together? No. What have we all lived through together? COVID. Has it shaped the way we feel about communicable diseases? I don't know about you, but it's definitely shaped the way I feel. Let me tell you, to this day, I probably wash my hands by at least 10 times a day. I wash my hands every time I go. Obviously, before I go outside, when I come back outside, I don't care if I'm opening up the door to get a box of pizza. When I come back, I'm gonna wash my hands before I touch my food. And some people say, well, you should do that anyway. I have never, I don't, I used to eat in the car and just eat fries. No, I don't do that. I, COVID made me so aware of spreading germs. Some people, it has changed their entire, way of living. And that is something that we will be talking about with our grandkids, and they will all be looking at us like, what are you talking about? Right? The same thing that we've done to our grandparents or our parents. I don't, and something else that everybody shares on the generational level is money. They did a study and they said that you can take a millionaire from Africa, a millionaire from Hawaii, a millionaire from China. And guess what? They would have a lot of similarities in how they think and in how they live. You can take a middle class person from China, from Africa, and from Hawaii, and they will have a similar mindset in how they think and how they live. It was so funny when they did this series, and you can even do some research on it, how the middle class people, they all had the same TV, they all had similar lifestyles, the rich people all had similar lifestyles, and obviously the people that lived in poverty, they did the same thing, and they all were kind of living the same way. Isn't that interesting? So what does that have to do with your work? You will have to work for, and sometimes people will have to work for you, and they are going to come from all these different generations. So right now, many of us are not working with people in what we call the silent generation. What are those people that are born between 1920 and 1939, our grandparents' era, right? You probably see them all in Congress. And these people, they think very differently. Look at what's happening now. This is something I'm going to say, and I apologize if people don't feel the same, but I feel like Congress should have term limits. I don't want to sound ageist. Does anyone else agree with that? I feel like after 75, you should not be able to run for president or run for office. Not because you don't have the agility or the acuity. I just feel like, how in touch are you with the general population? Do you have what it takes to communicate with, to engage with the, if you look at most companies, they're not ran by people that are over 80. Why do we have a country that's ran by people that's 80, 85, 90 years old? How in touch are they going to be? Look at how they grew up. They said here that it only accounts for 2% of the population, but they're very traditional. They do believe in hard work. They do believe in, traditions, but they also happen to believe, look at what's happening with our current president, which I believe a lot of what's happening is very generational, setting aside all the other stuff. I look at it in terms of, wow, they actually think that it's better for us to go back and do things the hard way. It baffles me. But I understand that's their comfort zone, right? If you didn't grow up on technology, if you didn't grow up with a lot of social media, I see why the president and people his age group wanted to attack TikTok. Think about it. Think about your great grandparents or your great grandparents. They're not going to understand it. They think AI is the demon. I'm like, oh my goodness, right? But it's a generational thing. So think about it. What if you were working and one of these people were actually your employee? How do you think both positively and negatively they can contribute to your team? Look at the baby boomers. This is probably most of your parents, maybe older siblings or whatever. Um, they're a little bit more ambitious. The baby boomers, this is when people came back from war and they had a lot of kids as a result of it, being away from your spouses, whatever. This is the largest generation to date of America. After this, the birth rates started to go down and they're continuing to decline. But this group of people, they do believe in strong work ethic. They do believe in being disciplined and independent. Can you imagine? Their parents were the people that had to deal with the Great Depression and all those types of things. So that the baby boomers are going to be like, pull your bootstraps up and work really hard and, save money underneath your pillow and, always, you never can't trust the bank and all kinds of stuff, right? So think about if these people worked for you or you worked for them, how they would approach the work. Maybe people like my generation, Generation X, we didn't grow up on technology, but we grew up, once I became like 17, 18 is when technology really took off. So it was in our work. So they said that this generation here truly has a foot in the traditional and a foot in the new. And I really believe that we do. I don't know if anybody else is Generation X or maybe your parents, but we know enough about the traditional way of living and the new way of living to make us balanced. And I think that's important for this particular generation because we can understand both sides of it. I love the millennials because with the millennials, they kind of grew up on technology, right? It probably wasn't when they were from a baby, but definitely from their early teens. If and maybe some of you had computers in your classrooms. We never had computers in our classrooms. We would have to go to the public library to get computers. I never worked on a computer until I went to the military. But you guys grew up, those that were in millennials, you grew up with that. Think about how they would approach work. Can you imagine someone that is a millennial? They would approach work very differently than somebody that's in the silent generation. So what does that have to do with you? If you are managing someone, let's say you have a silent generation person on your team and you have a millennial on your team and you paired them together. Now, we've heard of a lot of these things actually working out positively. Has anybody ever worked in an environment where your bestie was like way older than you or way younger than you? Anybody ever been in that situation? Isaac, those are really cool, right? I liked it. I remember when I was in the military, I was in my 20s and my best friend was like 45 and he was a guy. And I loved it because he taught me everything. He taught me my job. He was my supervisor. He taught me everything. We were the best of friends. I had another a young lady when I was, I don't know, maybe like 22 and she was 40. And I'm gonna be honest with you, at that time, I thought 40 was really old. But she was like my best. She would try to give me all different types of advice. And so I love dynamic, but me being younger, even during those times, I was always looking for the most efficient way to get things done. So imagine people now that are millennials and even Generation Z, imagine how they approach everything. How many people are Generation Z? Give me a thumbs up if you're Generation Z. I'm just curious. Generation Z, you can see here you're born after 1996. Okay, we got one. What about millennial? Who's a millennial? Millennial is if you were 81 to, what is this? 96? What? Yeah, generation. Got one? Okay. So the rest of us are Generation X. Now I know. It could be. It could be. But just think about it. So it's important for you to have the emotional intelligence to understand that when I work with people, yes, they may have different ethnic backgrounds, but what is going to be the biggest differentiator is going to be age. I'm being honest with you. It's going to be age or money. Yeah, everybody, has, whatever you eat and whatever you listen to, that don't have anything to do with the price of tea in China. It amazes me that those are the things that we focus on. When in reality, how a person grows up, their formative years, what is happening to them during their generational time shapes how they think. That's why you can even see some of the rhetoric here in America, God bless us, because if you watch closely, it's a lot of generational infighting. in my personal opinion. A lot of people see some other things, but I see a lot of, generational infighting. Even if you see what's happening in DC now, I'm not surprised they did that. Come on, they did that back in the early 50s and 60s, which so the fact that the president, who's about 115, is doing that, I'm not shocked, because he's doing what he thinks he knows. As offensive and ignorant as some people may think that it is, he's doing based on what he knows. So I wasn't even shocked, because it's a default, right? And not everybody has enough intelligence to realize, oh, okay, I'm acting on default. I'm acting on what was comfortable for me. I'm acting on my formidable years and where I felt safe. And most times people feel the most safe when they're growing up, and I'm not talking about your home, but I'm just talking about, as from your childhood to your early 20s, where you don't have tons of responsibility, but you're just kind of reacting to life. Those are those years where that your views are shaped the most, right? So a lot of people default to those times. And so you just have to be mindful of that when you're engaging with your coworkers, right? Because this multicultural workplace, it is going to be an environment with a lot of different people, a lot of different mindsets. And you have to be respectful, you have to be communicative, and I would say embrace it. Now, I personally love diverse workplace forces, a diverse workforce, because, being someone that has traveled, I like when people think differently. I like when people say, well, have you ever thought to, do it this way? Or here's why, we tend to approach it that way. I love it because, listen, I'm an efficiency person. I don't like doing something twice. And if someone can tell me how to do it easier, faster, let's go. That's just me. So that's one thing I do like about being in a team environment, because I like to hear how people think, because people do think differently. I still fail to understand, and maybe it's because some people just don't have entrepreneurial mindset, and I do believe I do. Why would you not want to hear all the different creative ways to get something done? That's something that I will never understand. And if someone else has a better way of doing it because they look at things differently, or maybe they have a different skill set, amen to that. So I am going to encourage you, especially if you think you're going to start your own business, like, always be open to learning how to do something differently, especially if it's more efficient and effective. That is my tip of the day for you. It's what I've always done in my career, right? So just wrapping this up, guys, listen, you are going to spend a lot of time in your career. It is going to be a lifelong process. You're going to go back to school at some point, many of you, so pace yourself, be realistic, understand how your industry is, and don't forget to set your financial goals, like we talked about at the top of this class, with your career goals, because you want to make sure that you stay in alignment with what your goals are. Some people, and have them side by side. Some people take their financial goals and they line them up with their career goals to make sure that they are making decisions that will ensure that they can meet both goals. Got it? All right. So here is your conference question for today. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to find a company in your career that you believe you want to work for. Go to their website, start doing some research. We did it. Hopefully you'll be doing it when you interview here soon enough, but you should start doing your research now. Go to the website.
Excuse me.
Uh-huh.
The participation question for yesterday, when I went to go and upload it, there wasn't like a section for it, like in my normal list of things to do, like how you showed us to do the assignments. When I was clicking through it, there just wasn't a slot for Monday.
I don't know. Everybody else, I mean, what campus are you with?
The participant.
But you're You're Arbondale, right?
Yes. I mean, I don't know why that one didn't show up for me. All the other ones
I,
did, but it's still
I
like
wonder
that.
if you were at the right one. I mean, 'cause I think you guys turned yours in, right? I saw everybody else's.
Yeah, I saw you graded it yesterday.
No, I'm saying the rest of your class. Everybody here is at Arbondale, right? Is that,
Yeah.
give me a thumbs up, guys. You guys, I mean, I can go back and look, but I
Yes,
think
yes.
Rudell, you,
I can share my screen to show you what it looks like.
yeah, but let's do that in a minute, Rudell. Let's do this first. I'm wondering if you were just looking at the wrong one, but let me do that in a minute. So here's your participation question for today. It says to name 3 specific details about the company. 3, so it can be the number of employees, their mission statement, how long they've been in business, anything that you find interesting, so let it be a practice of the first company that you want to work for once you graduate. Go to them and do some research on their company and give me 3 things. Any questions on that? All right, my friends, please remember tomorrow, Rudell, stay behind. Tomorrow is your last day to turn things in. Your last day to turn things in. Okay? Take care, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right, Rudell, let me stop the recording.